I'm going to start with some announcements. So welcome everyone to our guest speaker event today. My name is Sarah and I'm on the student team here at the Entrepreneurship Hub. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm super excited to introduce you to our amazing alumni founder in just a few minutes. But first I want to give a rundown of today's format. So I'm going to start by introducing our guest with a brief bio. Then I'll move on to the interactive interview portion using menti.com. I don't know if anyone in the audience has used that before, but you will all have the opportunity to answer questions alongside Michael and get live responses and reactions. Questions from you will be largely based on the Hub's pillars of entrepreneurial thinking, so that wall right over there. So keep those in mind as you're thinking of questions for Michael. And then next we will engage in a brief interview with Michael so that everyone can hear his story and get a sense of his entrepreneurial journey. And then I will hand over the mic for a quick demo so he can describe his venture. You'll all have a better idea about what it is and what it's all about. If we have time, we'll open up the discussion to an audience Q&A where you will have the opportunity to introduce yourself and ask your own questions that you may have. Okay, with that being said, I'm super excited to introduce our guest, Michael Martocci, to the Hub community today. Michael, the lifelong entrepreneur, running businesses since the age of 5 when he would set up his grocery stand outside of his house for neighbors to buy. Since, Michael has gone on to found companies ranging from a social networking app to DTC, e-com brands to a fitness business partnered with an NFL veteran. Since 2017, Michael has been leading SwagUp, the leading swag management platform, helping 5,000 plus top companies manage the creation and distribution of their branded merchandise. SwagUp generated over $100 million in revenue in under 5 years without raising any outside capital. Michael studied finance at William & Mary from 2013 to 2016 before leaving early to pursue entrepreneurial endeavors. From New Jersey, he currently lives in South Florida with his partner Helen and daughter Eleanor. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today. How are you doing?
Lovely. I love being here. I've been here like 4 or 5 times since leaving, in 2016. So it's always fun to come back, and we want our daughter to see the campus as she grows up. It's the first time that she's been here. So excited to see what's in here, and also to see this center that wasn't here, when I was here. It was really one of the things that we said when I was here is I wish it was more entrepreneurial, and obviously I probably should have tried to drive some of that change, but Graham's still doing a great job of getting the buy-in from everybody else around the campus, and it's great to see entrepreneurship really becoming a huge pillar of the school now.
That's great, and we're happy to have you here today. So I think we're just going to jump right into it and put on our interactive portion. So we'll have a mix of audience and guest speaker questions to get everyone involved. So for everyone in the audience, we need you to pull out your phones and open up menti.com or scan the QR code and wait a few minutes for everyone to get on there. And start with the first question.
They can answer.
Yeah, it'll be.
And they'll show their responses.
It'll be live. Yeah. Everyone, give you a thumbs up if you're in. All right, so our first question for the audience is, what words would you use to describe a good leader? So this will populate in a word cloud, so you can keep it to words or small phrases. And if you're just coming in, you can still join using menti.com and then the code at the top. So these are going to be rolling in the next few minutes, but as you look at the responses in the word cloud, are there any that resonate with you?
Well, the first one that I was going to say was the first one that popped up was empathy, because we have like 130 people on the team. I manage some of the teams directly, and so a lot of what I've seen is we brought in like other leaders to like take over parts of the businesses. They come in and they want to kind of push an agenda right away. It's like, oh, this is what I've done in other companies, and I want to do this here as well. And they don't really like take the time to listen to the people that have already been there and have the domain knowledge and the experience, and and even if you are going to kind of push your own agenda, like you want to show people that they're being heard and listened to, that they're part of the plan going forward. And I think that comes down to like empathy and lack of ego. It's like, hey, one of our values at the company is great ideas can come from anywhere and everybody deserves a seat at the table. And we try to listen to as many people in the company and let the best ideas kind of bubble up. And I think that great leaders are empathetic and they use that to build trust with their team, and the trust gets the buy-in and gets people like, okay, he's all about like what we're trying to do. He understands us. Like I'm behind him 110%. I think a lot of times leaders come in and they skip that step and they skip the empathy and the trust building, and then things never really happen. And then they start blaming the people and they say, oh, they're not doing it. Why aren't they listening? Then you skip the trust part, and if you don't have that, it's very hard to lead people. And the other thing I was gonna say is good leaders are there to serve, they're servants, not like, some people think that leadership is about, getting people to do things for you and stuff. And it's really the opposite. It's like you're doing things for them so that they can be successful. So it's, being empathetic and it's being a servant more than like a boss, I would say.
I think that's a great way to look at it. Obviously, there's a lot of great qualities here, so it's hard to kind of hone in on just a few, but you spoke to it pretty well. I want to pivot just a little bit. If you could tell us about your time at William & Mary and what experiences you remember fondly and have shaped your professional career.
Yeah, so I got here in 2013, out of state kid from New Jersey like you. So typically, coming into an environment where you don't know anybody, nobody from my school, I don't think I ever heard of William & Mary in New Jersey. So I think the big learning experience was just like kind of being on your own for the first time and learning how to like communicate with other people and find people with shared interests, and I think just like grow up a little bit in general. But I just remember I was such an eager person to get into the business school right away. I didn't like that there was this liberal arts nature. Looking back, I do like the liberal arts nature because like I find myself in knowing a lot of things about a lot of different things. I think that helps you get insights that are not so apparent if all you know is like finance or something. But I was like the freshman thing, like, how do you get in here early? Like, what classes do I have to take? Like, I want to get into these. I remember Dog Street to Wall Street was a fun program that they brought up, speakers back from the big banks and stuff. There was a training the street program where I learned like modeling, and I remember just being in my dorm room, nerding out, like buying some stocks and like doing DCF analysis of like Apple stock and showing it was undervalued back in the day and stuff. So I found myself learning outside of the class just as much as in the class because I was a pretty, just curious person. I had a bunch of books in there, and I remember just trying to find like people like me that were thinking a little bit differently, and I find that kind of hard. At least at that point, it was kind of hard to find the people that were looking to kind of break the mold, and I think that's the great thing about a program like this is like, it's a very kind of disarming place here. It's like, hey, just kind of come in. This is where like we're thinking differently, we're creative, people that want to start things, and everybody in the back of the mind has always wanted to like start a business, but I think it feels very hard to do, or you don't really know where to start. And I think that places like this would have been awesome to have because you end up like finding your tribe, like, truly. And one of the things that I did on campus was the social media, like the social networking app was called Click, and we didn't really take it anywhere, but we did a decent job here launching it initially. And it was all about finding people that like finding your click in a way, finding a shared interest. So, I love that this program's here now because it would have helped me find the people that I was trying to find it.
Speaking of clicks, what were some things and orgs you're involved in on campus, just so some students might be able to relate?
Yeah. So I'm not really like a fratty kind of person, but I wasn't a frat when I joined here. It's Kappa Delta Rho. And again, it was just a way to find just people, like, because I just didn't know anybody at the time. It just seemed like the easiest way to kind of get inserted into it. And I don't know if it's still the same at the time, but at the time it was a very kind of chill fraternity. It wasn't like the biggest party was on campus. He knows. So yeah, it's a good group. I'm still friends with plenty of them today. Besides that, I played like club golf. I was in it was like the investment club where they talk about different stock investments and stuff. But then, like I said, I'm also a bit of a recluse. I like to just read and like be by myself sometimes. So it's golf, the investment club, and the KDR. And I was actually the social chair at KDR, so that helped me meet some other people and also just like kind of break out of my shell and coordinate with other people a little bit.
That's great. I think we're going to move on to the next interactive question. So, what are some barriers to innovation you see today in today's business environment? So these are going to be short responses, so it could be a short sentence, if you'd like, or just some words. So I'm gonna let these populate in a little bit, but as you look at the responses on the screen, while many of these are perceived as barriers, could you see any of them reframed as opportunities?
First I'll say like what I think some of the barriers are. We can go into that. I think that there's less and less and less barriers every year. Like the cost to start a business has gone so low. AI is making it where you can get leverage like beyond what anybody thought before. Like, there really are much less barriers today than there were. Your knowledge is everywhere. The cost of computing is so much lower. Like, remote talent can be hired for super cheap costs. Like, there's so many things you can do now that you couldn't do before. I think the two biggest things that still get in people's way is one, their own fear and their own ego, which I saw kind of up there. Like, people just don't want to take the first step because they're afraid they're going to look bad, or people are going to say bad things about them, or they're going to be a failure or something. And so, like a lot of people said that, I think that that's the number one thing. It's more just internally, people have to get over that. And then the other one I think is like the government gets in the way of innovation. Like there's regulatory capture that, oh, you can't do this and this because these pharmaceutical companies give us all this money and these tech companies give us all this money, so we put in place policies that stifle innovation. I think that the more the government can get out of the way, then you'll have more innovation. And in terms of opportunities out of these things, first off, the fact that there are still these barriers that are irrational, like fear of failure, and people that think that lack of knowledge is a barrier, just shows like if you're willing to put in the work and you can go above them. If you can, lack of knowledge, like knowledge is everywhere. Like I said, like I use ChatGPT all day long to get knowledge, on a daily basis. So if your competition is not starting or not innovating because they think there's a lack of knowledge or there's a lack of financials, that they need, like I just think that then you can beat other people by being more resourceful. I think resourcefulness and curiosity are the two most important entrepreneurial tendencies. And you can beat any of these barriers by having both of those things.
I think that's great, and that's something we try to talk about here, our opportunity discovery pillar of just being able to spot those opportunities, even if they seem like they're not an opportunity. So kind of going off of that, are there specific areas in the entrepreneurial landscape today that you see as being kind of more ripe for innovation than others?
Well, I think a lot of just like the physical world is still pretty, old school. Like there's all these like SaaS apps and stuff for all these little niche use cases, but just like simple things like shipping and running warehouses and running restaurants and like just kind of the things that power the everyday economy, I think are still pretty old school. That there's just a lot of stuff that hasn't really been rethought a little bit over the last 50 years. And I think trying to look at those things that are, oh, why have we been doing it that way for so long? Like, oh, like I don't know, that's just what we do. And you just go through a drive-through and you have to like hand chain going to and it falls on the ground or something, or they don't remember what you said and you get the wrong thing. Like just like all those little day-to-day things that are actually the massive things that people deal with on a daily basis, I think are much more interesting and impactful than like another Notion or like project management tool or something. Like everybody wants to start kind of the same things, I feel like a lot of times. I mean, what about like construction technology or something like that? Seems like there's a lot of need to make that better. So I think just like stuff that we see in the physical world day to day, I think could be done a lot better.
Yeah, definitely, like the stuff right in front of you that you might not even fix.
Yeah, because a lot of people think, oh, like everybody must have figured that out already, or they've thought about that. There's a reason why that's not happening or something. But a lot of times it's like not true. Like Steve Jobs was always like, the world around you is very flexible. Like you'd be surprised that you can actually push on it and change it, and the world will kind of morph around you as an innovator. But there's really only so few people like the Elon Musk and the Steve Jobs of the world that are willing to kind of push against the status quo so hard that they change people's behaviors. But if you're willing to like be that bold, like there's no reason why shoes need to be shoes, like the way that we're wearing them. I don't know, they're not that different than what people made like 400 years ago, so I think that there's a lot of opportunity in front of us that we're kind of blind to.
Yeah, definitely. So I talked a little bit about the pillars earlier. We have one more interactive question, kind of going off of those. So which one of our pillars do you feel is the hardest to put into practice? So everyone can kind of choose which one they think. And then last, Michael's opinion as well. And move on to operation, self-direction.
And they're also up there.
It's like tolerance for ambiguity is definitely up there as one of the hardest that the audience feels, along with openness to risk and maybe some failing wisely as well. Do you agree?
It's pretty interactive, because like sometimes you do these things, you get like a response trickles in or something.
Yeah, I appreciate the participation.
So what was the question?
Which one do you feel is the hardest to put into practice?
Well, I agree with the two that were the highest. I mean, I think they're just kind of part of the same vein, both openness to risk and tolerance for ambiguity is kind of the same idea. Like you don't like to do things that are uncertain in general. And if you think about it, like human nature, we've been programmed to survive. Like our whole life is all about survival and not taking risks. That's like what we've been programmed to do since the through evolution for millions of years. So I think it's just naturally the hardest thing to go against is to like put yourself in these risky situations and vulnerable situations where you don't really know what the future is. So again, like there's very few people, honestly, that are truly risk takers, like that are willing to just push against risk all the time and they like get enjoyment out of it because it's a very unnatural kind of thing. It doesn't mean that people can't get there, but whether you're just starting or you're running a big company, you constantly, whether it's you who is fine with risk, but it's the people you're around working and trying to get them to be okay with risk, like it's a very unnatural thing to deal with on a daily basis. But a lot of times the riskiest thing to do is to not take risks, like especially if you're a big company, if you don't take risks, like you're almost surely going to go out of business eventually because the world changes too much. Like look at Macy's or any of these department stores or some of the restaurant chains, Boston Market, whatever it is, like they have no openness to take risks if there's no more entrepreneurial people left in these companies. And it's not a natural thing to do, and they just slowly fall off like over time. So I think that those two things, tolerance for ambiguity and openness to risk, are the same kind of vein, and they're the hardest things to get over, both when you're starting, but also as you get bigger, because you feel like you have something to lose now too. Like, oh, we can't give up the position we have, like we can't do stuff like that.
So in your personal experience, do you have any strategies to kind of help with those challenges?
Well, I mean, Jeff Bezos does a lot of good writings on this in like his annual shareholder letters. He doesn't write them anymore, he's not there anymore. But there's a book called Working Backwards that talks about all their principles. But he talks about these ideas of like one-way doors and two-way doors, or like type A or type B decision. I don't know exactly the terminology, but the idea is that so many of the decisions that we make on a daily basis are really two-way doors. Like you can go through the door, and if it doesn't make sense, you can like walk back in and do something else. But we treat almost every decision as if it's a one-way door. It's like, oh, like if we go through that door, I can never go back. It's like Monsters Inc. You ever seen Monsters Inc? You go through those doors and you're in like Siberia and the door never comes back. But then you go in like some kid's bedroom and you can walk back. Like too many people treat every decision as like, I'm gonna go to Siberia and I can never go back again. You have to be able to know like which one's which. And once you make that decision, then you can make decisions a lot faster. It's like, okay, just make it, whatever. Like we're better off going through that door and learning quickly and then coming back. And this happened at our own company like a few weeks ago. We just launched like this e-commerce kind of platform where you can sell merch like through our platform. And some of our employees get very squeamish when we put something out there because like, oh, well, this button's not like perfect. And like, this, I don't like the way that we worded this. It's like, I don't really care. Like, let's just get it out there. Let's let the customers tell us like what the issues are and then we'll fix it quickly. Like, it's not the end of the world. It's not like that product's going to be there forever. It's not malleable. So I think you have to like get people to realize that decisions are not permanent, you know, even if you were to drop out of school tomorrow, I'm not saying to do that, but even if you did, you know, William & Mary, I'm sure it's gonna take you back, you know, 3 months later, 6 months later, you know, if you wanted to come back. So like experiment a little bit more and realize that on the other side of failure or risk is not really that scary. You know, I think that we fear the things that we don't know, and risk is like these, you know, and ambiguity is these things we don't know. And the more that you can know those things, the more you can know that they're not that scary. It's like a roller coaster. There's so many people that are scared to get on roller coasters, and then somehow they get on the roller coaster, and then they love roller coasters now. You know, so we fear the things we don't know, so I get to know them faster.
I think that's great advice. It's all about like a mindset shift in that way. So we're gonna pivot a bit from the interactive portion and kind of zero in a little bit more on your venture, SwagUp particularly. So we're gonna start a little bit with that opportunity. So take me back to the beginning before your venture was the venture that it is today. And how did you initially discover that opportunity?
Well, I think, like I said, curiosity is one of the most important things that you can have. And I've always been a naturally curious person, always looking out for opportunities, talking to different people. You know, when I meet somebody older than me, I was always like I was always friends with my friends' parents, like growing up. I'd go to their houses and like they'd all be playing like baseball or video games, and I'm like talking to their parents, like, you know, what do you do for a living? Like, I'm curious. Like, yeah, I remember going to Disney World and like waking up in the morning reading like the New York Times or something instead of like whatever the other kids were doing. So naturally, I'm always on the lookout for like pain that people kind of are feeling in a general way. And when I was here, one of the things that we did with the app was we put flags up in like dorm rooms and fraternity houses, because I had seen like Barstool at the time, like 10, 15 years ago, was putting, you know, flags up on college campuses to promote like their website and their content and stuff. So I couldn't find a supplier in the US to get those flags for like less than $120, but I had experience sourcing through China on Alibaba with a high school business where we sold like those hoverboard segways. So I knew how to like source on there, and I found a supplier for flags and banners for like $7 instead of $127. So when we launched the app, we also launched like a website called cheapcustomprinting.com. And we were just like selling this signage into US small businesses. And it was never like crazy, but we did maybe $40,000, $50,000 a year without like any advertising, and like random businesses would find us and stuff. So it was like the first time I learned about it. And then I got introduced to people that did Trump's campaign merchandise. They made the red hats and all these shirts, and they were just such a backwards business. Like it was so antiquated the way they were running it. They had no technology. They really didn't know how to acquire customers at scale. We just had this one customer, and their website was like the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Like it says on the bottom, and then I go on their website, and it says powered by Sage. And I'm like, what is Sage? I'm interested, like, let me dive deeper. And then I find out that Sage is like a database of all the products and vendors in the industry. So I signed up for an account, and I'll be like, okay, I know how to like source, you know, flags. I made some t-shirts for fraternities, but I didn't know that there's this whole world of suppliers in the promotional products world that I can find that make notebooks and jackets and hats and backpacks and all this kind of stuff. So now I'm like, okay, I kind of know the industry. I know that these people run this business and it's pretty terrible. And I know where they're getting all their products from. And I didn't like start SwagUp right away. The next thing I did, I was at a VC fund for like 6 months, not even 6 months, like 4 months in New York City. And just being around startups day in and day out, you saw like how much they love swag. I mean, you got swag all over the place. Like it's such a key part of building like a community and bringing people together. And you know, and at the same time, startups are getting so much funding. There's so many new startups, and all the vendors out there were very legacy. You know, it's like ordering, and customing, and then these like websites, and then you have like these little mom and pop local shops. And I was like, you know, as these startups continue to grow and they love swag, like we need to build a modern solution for like these types of companies. So SwagUp is really the combination of startup and swag kind of together. And now we focus on like all different types of business. Like, you can't say you focus on a lot of things, but you know, we work with all types of businesses, but it's very much startups needed a better way to like manage this problem.
That's awesome. So now you do have that idea and you know where you want to take it. So what were some key actions you took to make it from that?
Yeah, so I started while I was at the VC fund. I think that's one of the things that people, you know, that openness to risk and ambiguity is like, you don't always have to just cut cold turkey and then go start some business and like, you know, put yourself in harm's way. Like you can do things half in, half out to start to get some initial feedback. So I was still working at that company during the day, but at night, you know, I started the website and I did it low risk, like on Wix. You know, like obviously I wanted like a nice product that you can log into a dashboard and stuff, but you have to start somewhere. So I had like a Wix website, and we use like Typeform to make it look like a nice catalog experience that you can interact with, and you can submit it. And then I had like Zapier connecting it to like a Trello board so I can keep track of all the different projects and orders. So we just came up with like a low risk way to get off the ground that at least proved that people actually cared enough to like do something here, like startups are actually looking for a better solution. So I think you have to, you can do it without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars or quitting your job. You can just like start in small ways, get the validation. And then once I saw them, like, oh yeah, there is validation. Like very legitimate companies were finding us randomly and reaching out. And then I was like, screw it, I'm leaving here. I'm just do this full time. And then, it was 2 years. So one of the things I hear a lot is like, oh, I can't do that because I don't know how to like develop. I'm not an engineer or something or this or that. We did like $7 million in revenue before like writing a single line of code. It was all just like, you could figure out ways to be like a service business to start that is a service that leads you to like the type of product you want to build. Like there's always a way to kind of make it happen. So that's basically what happened.
Yeah, that's great. So could you tell us about maybe like a make or break moment or a turning point where you felt like everything changed for the better, kind of flips what it is?
I was gonna say for the better, for the worse. But
You
every
can
day,
say both.
I feel like every day there's like a turning point that it's all gonna go to shit. That's one of the things, like startups and entrepreneurship, like you're always on the verge of failure, honestly. Like there's always somebody that's trying to take your business away from you. You typically don't have tons of money. There's all these things that can happen on a daily basis that you have to be ready for the roller coaster of ups and downs. But the ups are cool too. Like the turning point for us, and it's, obviously wasn't a great thing, but it was the pandemic. And, we are very situated, if you think about it, to help remote companies because we handle everything from end to end, including inventory management, global logistics. So you had all these companies that were no longer in their office anymore. And now they needed help onboarding employees remotely. So let's say NASDAQ's hiring 1,000 people this year, 500 in India, 200 in Germany, 100 in New York City. And this like HR manager is like at her house or something, or in her apartment in New York City. Like, how is she possibly gonna build like an onboarding experience that makes them feel like they're part of the company and like this and replicate what was happening in the office? And they really couldn't. So Swag became such a huge part of the indoctrination of bringing people into companies. And then they would turn to a company like us, who at the time, at the beginning of the pandemic, was really the only one that was doing like the tax and the inventory management, had a technology platform for it. So we were just getting like bombarded with customers. We went from 6 million, we were doing 6 million a year going into the pandemic. 18 months later, we were doing 50 million. And we had to totally change like our warehouse. We had moved 2 times. The team went from like 40 people to 240 people at the peak. Like it was just a crazy time. So you have to kind of spot those opportunities and take advantage of them. Like in the first month, we were kind of unsure, like, is the business just gonna, go under at this point? Because who's gonna be thinking about Swag when everybody's like worried about like staying alive? And then when we started to see some early signs that there was like, oh, actually, this might actually be really good. We started to like build lots of content and change things about our platform that would like serve this type of changing world. And so when you see opportunities, you're gonna have to capitalize too.
Yeah, that's definitely a great example of opportunity discovery because a lot of businesses suffered in the pandemic. You were actually able to spot like how to make your business grow and actually be the turning point that kind of changed everything. So that's really great. Thank you so much for sharing your story about how SwagUp came to be. I think now we want to give you the opportunity to maybe share your website a bit and kind of explain to everyone kind of what it looks like today. So
I don't know if I can control it, but I can also just talk
Yeah.
about it. Right? Control it there? Cool. Do that. So, well, can you hear me okay if I just speak without it? So, good. So, I mean, just a level set, because I didn't really like do an overview. At the end of the day, what SwagUp is, we call it a swag management platform. So if you think about any company, any organization, they use branded merchandise for so many different use cases, whether it's uniforms for their teams, whether it's new hire welcoming, whether it's gift to their customers, whether it's trade show materials every time they're going to events. Like, if you really think about it, they spend a shit ton of money on stuff. Like a normal company will spend anywhere from $10,000 to $10 million, literally, tens of millions of dollars sometimes when we talk about big pharmaceutical companies and big financial institutions. Because and when you start thinking about it, you start seeing it everywhere. Next time you go to the airport, this person's wearing a custom backpack, they're wearing their custom jacket from their company. It's really everywhere. And I believe fundamentally that's a great tool for bringing people together that care about something in common. I don't believe in it too much for just, hey, just give it away to random people and hopefully they care about us. I think it's more about people that already care. Everybody's here for a common reason. You're gonna cherish the swag from this place much more than you would some bank just gave it to you who you don't even work with or something, so that's, I believe that swag's super valuable. But I also think that it's really challenging to work with logistically. It's a lot of process and less steps. What items should I use? How do I design these items? How am I gonna store them? I'm in my office, in my garage. I have people that are all around the world. How am I gonna get it to them? So we strive to make that process from start to finish a lot simpler, all the way from product creation and discovery to getting it into the hands of people around the world. And then the other thing too is just like the brand. Like we wanted to make the brand super friendly and modern, and not like you're going on a website that looks like it's from 2002, like you're buying from like Amazon back in the day or something, which is what a lot of these experiences kind of look like too. So not only is it a place to like go shop, but we built a whole management like portal or platform essentially for companies to manage this process from start to finish. So just to give you kind of a walkthrough, like you go in and you can create different products from our site. So we have the ability to make these like kits, which a lot of companies like because they can create like bundles and then easily ship these boxes to different use cases. But they go onto our site and they build the first. You can go into our site and kind of like in real time pick the items that you want and start building out different kits or just individual items, whatever it might be, and submit them. Once you've done that, it starts creating orders or order requests or projects in our platform. And in here, you can basically go in and interact with like our design team. So we have a 6-person design team that's doing all the mock-up creation for you. You just kind of interact with them like, hey, I like this, I don't like this, change the color on this. So this is like what an order kind of looks like. This is a kind of complicated order where there's like multiple different things that are being ordered at this time. And while you're placing the order, you can go in like, all right, I want 1,000 shipped here, I want 500 shipped here. It's dynamically creating shipping rates and stuff. You can upload like CSVs if you have like tons of different addresses. Once you place the order, if you didn't ship them all to like your offices or something, by default we'll store them in our warehouse. So we run a 50,000 square foot warehouse in New Jersey. It's full of customer inventory, and then they can go into their platform at any given time, see what they have, reorder it, send it out to people. So let's say I wanted to send this onesie to to somebody's house. I can go here. Select from an existing address. I've got like 3,000 addresses in my contact book at this company. You can have like groups of contacts, or you can also just like upload, a big like CSV master file, all your employees, all your customers, whatever, and ship a ton to them. So that's like the manual way that people work with us. But we've also built more scalable ways that you can work with us. For example, Redeem. So what Redeem is a little like page builder that lets you build a page. I don't know if it's gonna be messed up. So it lets you build like a page like this that you can send links out, and they can be one-time use links that stop working once somebody fills it out. And they go in, they can pick the item they want, they can fill in their information. So Northrop Grumman, the big defense company, they work with us. 13,000 new hires a year automatically get sent a link to go get their new hire swag when they sign up for their job. And it's just happening like on autopilot for these companies in the background. So they don't have to have like an HR manager like, oh, did you remember that, Sally's joining next week? Like, we got to send her something. It's like they forget, and now you have an employee experience that's all over the place. It's not consistent. So those are some of the things that we do for them. We also built, this is a recent thing I was just talking about, where you can actually build an e-commerce store right inside of the platform. So if you wanted to sell merchandise to your customer base, your employees, or you can even give out credits and points to people, similar to like what you all are doing here. Hey, when it's their work anniversary, when it's their birthday, when they just had a baby, give them $100, go into the store, pick out whatever item you want, and it's all managed right in here. It's not like a Shopify that's like janky and not connected to it. It's all kind of through the same ecosystem. And then lastly, we have integrations. We're launching 60 of these next week, or in a few weeks, with all the major HR platforms. So Workday, Gusto, ADP, whatever it is, so that automatically the data is just flowing from their systems into ours to trigger shipments to go out, or to trigger $50 to go to this person because they just hit their 2-year anniversary. So the more that we make this process more simple and streamlined, my whole belief is that companies are gonna start to use Swag for more use cases. They're gonna be like, hey, this is actually really easy. Why don't we use this for their birthdays? Why don't we use it for their anniversary? Why don't we use this for when a customer hits their, 1 year mark with us, or, oh, they're about to churn as a customer, we should send it to them. So the more you eliminate the frictionless process, we believe companies are gonna, expand their budgets for this. And that's hopefully what we're always about, like how do we make this as simple as possible? So, and then we also, for people that are pretty technical, everything that we've built here can also be accessible through our API. So we do have like partnerships and stuff with other companies where they just, pile on top of our capabilities and natively integrate with their platform. So like if they're like an employee engagement platform, that company can like handle Swag distribution without ever leaving our partners like application. They don't have to come onto our side much. So we think that there's a lot of stuff like that the future of making this stuff more streamlined will also do about. So hopefully that makes sense. That's what we do.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. I think we're in an excellent spot to start our audience Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand and we can try to get a mic over to you. Yeah.
The microphone?
Yeah, the black part.
Oh, it's actually a microphone?
Yeah, it's a throwable, so you can throw it around. Yeah.
I'm currently in the process of kind of starting to build my own e-commerce platform, and something that we've been struggling with before we launched is trying to figure out like what features we really need to launch so we can launch like these outtakes much more into it and do a learn. And so after kind of going through the review shows what did you start with at the beginning that you absolutely needed to, so we'll actually want to use your website?
Yeah, but I don't know, it depends on what you do, but for us, like, they need to be able to place an order, they need to be able to ship products, so we need to have like basic workflows to just manage the creation of the order, the payment for the order, seeing your inventory and creating a shipment. So there's a difference between like an MVP and just being kind of craft too, it's like you definitely don't want to just like throw it out there, nothing works, and it's like missing like just the basic things to even accomplish the task. But I think you have to work backwards from like what is the one really painful problem that you're trying to solve for a company, not try to solve all the different problems that they have, like pick one very specific painful problem and just solve that one really, really well. And then you kind of earn the right to solve more problems for them. But I think you have to solve one problem completely, not like a bunch of problems like kind of half-assed where everything is like you half built. And you just pick something, do it really well, get them to be like, I like these guys, I trust them, this platform's great. I imagine if they add more functionality, that'll also be great too. But just like pick a sliver of their problem, I think, and solve it well.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you. I was wondering, because I had a question at the beginning with like a more general, what are the barriers to innovation? Because someone I know is like telling me we should go back to the gold standard or like stuff like that, where they don't really believe in like this innovation that other people see is like really important. So I just wonder, do you think about those cases, or do you more just think there's enough people that are willing to change that I can just change based on their like willingness? Or do you like think about those cases where they just want to be like traditional, they don't want to like ever change?
Yeah. I think that the truth comes out always eventually, in the truth being like whatever is the best thing for society becomes the thing that people migrate to. There's this book called like Crossing the Chasm, and there's this whole idea of like early adopters, early innovators, laggards, whatever, the middle of the market. Like there's always some group of people that are willing to go out on a limb for the innovation. Like take blockchain, for example, take AI, for example. There's always these people that come to these types of meetups that are the crazy, weird people that are like, yeah, I'm all for that. And it just takes time for it to start to slowly infect the rest of the culture to where it becomes commonplace. Because take blockchain, for example, or in crypto, a lot of those apps are like really ugly looking, they're not easy to use. You have to like type in like this key and you're afraid you're gonna lose all your money. Like that's how these things typically are. And it takes like 5-10 years until it gets to a point where normal people are like, okay, I guess this kind of makes sense. I'm kind of comfortable with this. So you just have to if you're gonna do something that's super innovative, you just have to realize that it's gonna take like 10 years, literally like 10 years until normal people get over the, affliction of like, oh, that's really weird, that's really risky, like, because eventually, if it is better, and again, it has to be fundamentally better, because there's a lot of people that are like crypto maximalists, where it doesn't actually solve a problem for people, it's not actually better for people, they just like want it for innovation's sake. Innovation is not just gonna be what people use if it doesn't actually solve problems for people at the end of the day, but if it does, and it's actually better for people, the world is gonna come around to it at a certain point, just no matter how long it's gonna take to get there, and it starts with these early adopters that tell their friends about it, that tell their friends about it, and then it finally gets to the people that are very risk averse, who are like, okay, this is safe enough for me now, and I'll do it, but if it doesn't solve problems, it's not gonna make it.
Yeah, thank you. Can you say one or two, like websites or apps that you took inspiration from for your website, like Venmo maybe or something? I
Venmo?
like the design of
I
it.
mean, I think sometimes people get caught up in like trying to find like a direct parallel, like, all right, I'm gonna look at like another side company that does some things interesting, and to your point, I think you have to look for inspiration everywhere. Like, I think you have Chick-fil-A or something, or Wawa, maybe the little kiosk in Wawa has a really cool user experience, like, I wanna take that into like what I'm doing here, so I think always, first off, just always being on the lookout for things that are really interesting, and user experiences that are really interesting. I don't know, I think Fair is a really cool company. They're like a wholesale marketplace, FAIRE. So we looked at, some of the stuff that they were doing, but I don't know, I try not to look too much into what other people are doing, because then you can get stuck like becoming a copycat of other companies. But there's a lot of value in like finding parallels outside of your industry and bringing those lessons into this industry,
So do you have a mechanism within your company for new ideas? How do you decide on what new direction you're gonna go?
Yeah, I think it's a hard thing to do in general, because a lot of times people join companies and they just assume there's a hierarchy of command, where, okay, like, I don't really know who to bring that to, or I'm not supposed to bring those types of ideas. There's people above me that make those types of decisions. So I think it's not necessarily like processes, but it's about the culture that you develop at your company. Like, I used to think that culture was this kind of frou-frou thing that wasn't really very important, but then the people that who are super successful, they'll be like, no, culture is like the only thing that matters, and the reason is because as you get bigger and bigger and more successful, it's the culture that ends up defining every decision that a company makes, whether it's the people that they hire, the products they build, how they treat customers, and you no longer can control everything. It's like the founder or the leader of the company. You can't be in every little meeting making decisions. And it ultimately ends up being the culture is making the decisions. Yeah, there's people, but the people are really embodying the culture that you developed. If you have a strong culture and you found people that, are bought into it. So I think it's less about like the processes you build. It's more about being deliberate about the culture that you're reinforcing and how you educate people on that culture and how you find the people that embody that culture on a daily basis. And then you can kind of trust them to do the things on a daily basis that are going to bring ideas to the table, they're going to listen to the people that they hire, they're going to hire the types of people that are willing to push against, the agenda and be uncomfortable. So I think it's hard to like, oh, we have this meeting on the calendar once a month where you bring your ideas to the table, because people are like scared to bring ideas, or they don't think you're going to listen to them if you don't have the right culture. So I think, if you have a great culture, it's a lot of work. It's very hard to build a deliberate culture, because you have to be very specific about it, and you have to be very detailed, like this is our culture, and you have to reinforce it every day, and it's very fragile, you can break it by not showing that you actually care about it, but if you do it right, it makes all these other things kind of fall into place.
Hi, so I'm in the process of starting my own organization and possibly my own record label. And when talking about just the generic like organizations, brands and businesses, how did you go about like building your brand and outsourcing to other colleagues or people that would potentially join you?
Are you more focused on like how to build the brand and get the initial kind of notoriety, or?
Also like, finding other partners and employees to join you.
Like people that are like oh, like, I've never heard of this company, why should I join? Join you, like how you get the initial kind of traction and stuff. I don't know, I mean, you have to kind of, in the beginning, you have to kind of look a little bit bigger than you are, I think, in general. Like some of the things that we would do is try to go to like notable organizations and tie ourselves to them in some way. Like, hey, Facebook, can we do an order for you for like $5,000? And maybe we'll do it for them for free or something, just something that lets us associate ourselves with those people so that we can then go to the next group and be like, oh, we work with Facebook. So I think you have to try to manufacture relevance in the beginning, do things, provide so much value where people that are actually important are gonna wanna be associated with you or are willing to work with you in some way. And then use that as credibility and leverage it to just keep stacking credibility on top of it, you know, because then, you know, maybe it starts small. It's, you just do something with William & Mary. William & Mary gets you the door to like some other institution, maybe has a little bit more credibility. You just kind of have to keep leveling up. But you also have to think like the first year, I mean, like we just hired a bunch of friends that were willing to join. Like you're not gonna go get like the CEO of JP Morgan come work for your company anytime soon. It's, you know, because again, most people are also risk averse, like they don't want to leave the thing that they're doing. They have to either be like super passionate or they have to see that there's some sort of, you know, attraction and credibility and relevance to what you're doing. But I think you can manufacture it though by, you know, being smart about who you associate yourself with. People are very, you know, they look for symbols like what, you know, are there logos? Were you in a Forbes article? Were you in this? Were you in that? Like, I was in the Forbes 30 under 30. I don't really like to talk about it, but like it helps me get meetings with certain people if I decide to like bring that up or something, you know. So just try to figure out how you can get in those types of ecosystems.
And then very simply, like what characteristics and traits are you looking for in an employee or a company, someone you might work with?
Well, like I said, I think curiosity and resourcefulness are the two most important characteristics of anybody. And you want people that are self-motivated, and that's what curiosity kind of comes from too, but you can't like be on top of people. Like, are you looking for just like an extra arm, or are you looking for like a whole nother army of people? Like, you know, a lot of times you hire people and they're not the right people and they make it worse for you because you have to kind of hold their hand and do everything for them. Or you just get a little bit of leverage because yeah, they do the job well if you tell them what to do, but in the beginning, you're looking for people you don't need to tell them what to do. You tell them this is what we're trying to achieve as a company, then they come to you with ideas like, hey, I tried this, I did this, let's do this, you know, and if the faster you can get those types of people, then you start to get leverage and you're doing multiple things at once versus you're the bottleneck for every decision. You have to tell this person, go do this, go do that, why don't you do, you know, like you don't want that. So you gotta find some of those people that are curious and resourceful and self-starters and come to you with ideas all the time.
Those are some great questions from the audience. Thank you so much. And thank you, Michael, for dedicating your time to us today and for your insight. It's been so interesting to learn about your journey. And this concludes our guest speaker portion for today.